Hello, Internet. Here once again. You are with Kopitiam Council, and today, as usual, you are with Haffisz and
He is with Adi Putra, as usual.
as as usual. And today, yes, this is the second episode, or I mean, second commitment that we gave to all of you at least once a week. So here we are keeping our promise. Adi, anything you want to say before we start
I
our
think
first topic?
just want to say thank you if you've been catching up on Kopitiam Council. And like Hafiz says, we're going to try make do on our promise to actually bring you informative episodes once a week. And we're going to keep on trying to do that and see where it goes.
Yeah, and as usual, you can always look for Kopitiam Council on YouTube, where if visual podcast is your thing, or if audio, or while you're listening during jogging or physical activity, you can always listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So with that out of the way, let's dig into the first topic we have. What do we have, Adi?
All right, so it's not exactly a new topic, but it's a topic that we've been wanting to cover for quite some time, and that has to do with the recently announced 50% discount. Some like to call that in terms of royal pardon for former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Razak. Despite being convicted and sentenced to imprisonment, he has somehow found his way to actually receive a royal pardon that has halved his prison sentence, and the fine that was he was given has also been cut down to at least by around 75%. So this has raised a lot of questions on whether or not this is a fair thing to happen. Obviously, you can argue whether or not he does deserve the sentence or not, and you're free to believe that this whole royal pardon business is something that goes against sort of like the people's will. However, we can see a lot of people also celebrating the fact that Dr. Sri Najib is able to somehow possibly make somewhat of a comeback within about 6 years, and with parole and good behavior, he could actually make it back within less than 4 years. So this has kind of shaken up a bit of the political scene that is happening in Malaysia. A lot of people divided on the issue. Some are celebrating, some are despairing. So this also calls into question the whole role of the royal institution, the Yang-Di Pertuan Agong, or even the role of the monarch, given that Malaysia is a constitutional monarchy where we have sultans and an appointed king every 4 to 5 years. So this is going to be a bigger conversation here. First, we're going to address specifically the royal pardon. Then I think we're going to shift a bit into the role of the monarch itself, the royal institutions, and going to give a bit of a comparison because this is more of a West Malaysian thing and not really something we have witnessed in Sabah. Of course, Sarawak has had the time of the White Rajas, with the British kings in Sarawak. But we're going to make a bit of a comparison there towards the end. So, in terms of royal pardon, where can we start? What do you think about this whole royal pardon stuff, Hafiz?
I always try to divide things into bits and try to look at from bigger perspective. So for me, I always divided this to two what you call a subject. So first is legality of it, like how it's written in the constitution, the rights whoever the monarch that has yield the power to do so, and also in terms of the implication, or it is politically or morally speaking. All right. So the first one, I think, this is one of the things that we need to uh, be peace with, because it's part of the constitution says that it is a privilege of the monarch, sitting monarch, to grant a pardon to anyone he wishes without any justification, without telling the whatever, even though the agong supposed to be advised by the board, he as a as a sitting Agong can decide on anyone that he wants to pardon, whether it is like 50% like Najib or fully. Because we also heard, Adi, there's some cases by Shafi'i mentioned that initially the late Agong, the previous Agong, wanted to grant Najib full pardon. So immediately out of the jail. So this is another thing that we need to understand as Malaysian, as a layman or Sabahan, you may say. Like there's a legality to it. This is the privilege, the for the Agung, and then another part for it. Like, is it politically right? Is it morally right to do so? Someone that has squandered hundreds of millions of ringgits. If you can imagine, if the Ministry of Health, they may need 100 billion a year, and if that 100 billion channeled towards uh, Ministry of Health, it could impact the whole Malaysia, uh, in so many different ways. So these are the implications that we need to think about, and that's why I think the pardon is really a high profile case due to this gravity. So I think that's where I would like to see. How about you?
I think if we look back at the nature of royal pardons, it's always been used for high profile cases here. So anything to do with royal pardon will always draw some kind of controversy because of the nature of the individuals involved in the royal pardon itself. So, okay, you talked about the legality. Of course, it is the right of the Yang-Di Pertuan Agong, the sitting king, to be able to divest that kind of privilege. But however, I'm going to be focusing more on the implications here as well, because when we look at the potential idea of Datuk Seri Najib coming out of jail, right? It's going I feel that it's going to play a huge role in how politics is going to move forward in Malaysia here. Now, one thing I'm going to say is first, of course, he has resigned as the previous party president for UMNO, but I believe he still has that kind of support within the party, and being able to play a role again would surge up support back for UMNO, given that he has a huge grassroots following, which was sort of lost once Zahid Hamidi came to assume the position. So this is one thing that I can foresee. Should that be the case, that Najib does come out in the near future, or even now, that he gets a full pardon if that comes to pass, and that would kind of throw a bit of a wrench into the current Prime Minister, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim, into what can be done now. Now that if, let's say, Najib returns to UMNO, he'll be dealing with an UMNO that is more empowered already with the presence of Dr. Sri Najib. So I believe here that if that was the case, Anwar would still find a way to work with Najib. Because now Anwar, I believe, he is not the same Anwar that stood for something the less tangible, which was ideas and reformation. Now this is an Anwar that has to return back to playing politician. He has to return to find a way to bring back that Malay support that UMNO has lost, sort of like cleaning up UMNO's mess. And that means he has to work with an UMNO that is more receptive. And I think with Najib coming back, that would be a very receptive, how do you say, that would be a receptive UMNO. And I think this will come into play better for the Prime Minister, because I think he would work better with Najib than what he has been doing with Zahid. So far, Zahid has been this very passive, almost, how do you say, uh, submissive kind of character to the Prime Minister right now. But that's also not just have to do with just the political numbers that Zahid holds with UMNO. I think also in terms of capability. Now, when you look at Najib and when you look at Zahid, these are two people that are completely different in terms of capability. Najib can be seen as a more towering individual who has that charisma, who is able to negotiate with the elites, but at the same time able to surge up that grassroots support. Zahid, I think he's only meant to be able to play the game of drawing in the grassroots, and has not much experience or even skills to negotiate with the more elite part of UMNO, which does form up the financial backbone of the party. But if also at the same time, it's that because Najib is a more capable person, he would relate easier to Anwar Ibrahim. Both are on a quite a similar level in terms of, let's say, substance, education, or even like charisma. You see, so I think they would find a way to mix well together than the current arrangement between Anwar and Zahid. So that's what I would see as a political implication. I think it would be more favorable. And at the same time, because Najib isn't convicted for every case that he was charged with, if Anwar still holding quite, how do you say, a dependent judiciary, he can still hold that over Najib as well. He could still have that arrangement that you step out of line, then okay, then we're going to play dirty again. But if we work together, then all is well. So that is one thing that I can sort of see if that was the case of this whole royal pardon business. I think in a way it would lose, let's say, the support of people who has always been anti-Najib, but that is not easily quantified. I wouldn't say that was very easily quantified, but it can easily bring back the people who has lost support in UMNO through Najib by proxy. So in a way, it's a trade up to consider if the prime minister wants to reformulate his strategies moving forward with this revelation, so to say.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you brought up. How Anwar would work better with Najib instead of Zahid. But I also on the point of that if Anwar wants to be dominant for the next 4 or 3 years, I think Zahid would be a better option. Like you said, more submissive character, so everything is spotlight on Anwar. Zahid just doing everything behind the closed door. So I think that's more in terms of how PH alone, not including AMNO and the other GRS, going into the next general elections, because otherwise if we have this written the written of Najib to UMNO, it would certainly demand their supporters to be separated, or even repeating the history of doing a marriage with Perikatan Nasional. That's the last thing we want to see to government of the day today. Like another episode of that again. Mofakat National might be revived. Anwar Musa get back into the main politics. So that's gonna be another episode, repetitive episode for us. So I think also we need to keep in mind here, because Najib still has ongoing trial for the 1MDB cases. So whatever that pardon here today only apply already, or only apply to current sentence. So in the future he might, even though he's out of the jail, but he might not be to be put on the under the spotlight by AMNO because of his ongoing cases. So there's a lot of at stake here for AMNO, especially because the Zaid not just gonna give it like that, like, hey, Najib, please return to the number one post. I'm gonna be your second again. No, he's been waiting this all time, and now it his time. He's been through a lot. He almost got voted out, but he swiggled his way in. And how Najib how sorry how KJ now it's outside of AMNO, and Zahid now still the president after 1 or 2 years their internal election. So I think this is another thing that needs to be considered in, if uh, unity government wants uh, to be seen, at least to be seen stable going ahead into the next general election.
Yeah. So in that regard, I think it would have been sort of better that Najib stays locked out of the next election cycle. But who knows? Once he's out, then that they'll cross that bridge when it comes, basically. But I mean, okay, this royal pardon, right? Of course, it's a huge deal, right? But Anwar is playing very silent about this. He's just leaving it to the pardons commission, the pardons board, to decide.
Najib's
And
lawyer.
yes, and Najib's lawyer. So he's playing a very passive role in this. He's not actively saying much. He's choosing to not make any comments. However, it's because of this. There's a lot of misleading comments made from other individuals, like from AMNO, they're saying that it's a fool, or some saying that he does. It's a very mixed communication. But and I think also this has to do with the fact that it's not to mention saying anything is going to be quite uh, may be detrimental to his standing. But he himself is also a recipient of a royal pardon. He himself was granted a full royal pardon back then after being put in jail for the second time. So this is a case of Najib is going through the same similar situation as I have, and it's a bit very awkward here. And he himself, it was a very high profile situation. It was a high profile case, alongside other cases of a royal pardons being divested to individuals. So there's a whole gang or club of royal pardons here. And I notice it's always individuals who tend to be on quite a high standing in public life. These are people who have had a huge reputation, a big reputation in politics. So you will never really see a royal pardon being divested to a regular person. It's always a very high profile person. So let's try, I want to try bring this conversation to the idea of royal pardons, the people who has received royal pardons. And I think, what do you think of like all these businesses of royal pardons itself?
For those listeners who know me personally, they know that I'm anti-monarchy. Yeah, I'm just gonna go out of the limb here because yeah, but whatever that said in the constitution, like I'm still a law-abiding citizen of Malaysia, so nothing to be worried here. Uh, on a serious note, this is part of constitutional monarch that we are in. Like there's no two ways about it. That's whatever that's written in constitution. It says pardon is a privilege for the sitting agong, and that's it. But another perspective at it that I slightly disagree with you, because royal pardon actually happens all the time. It's just in each state, the sultans granted this to their own citizen. For example, 2015 in Johor, the sultan now, current Agong now, granted pardon to certain few individuals. Also happened in 2015 in Kelantan, and most recently 2020 in Perak. So there's actually it's happening, but again, these are by their respective sultans, not by Agong. So Agong, of course, it's something involving very high profile personalities like Anwar Ibrahim, Mokhtar Hashim, and Harus Idrin. These are in the past. These are even more than what Anwar or what Najib Razak committed. These are murdered being committed. But again, whether it's heavy or not, it's up to the court to judge, right? So for for me, this royal pardon practices is very unique, and we have an even more unique because we are the only country in the world that rotates our monarch. So every 5 years we have a new agong, and it's going to be different personality that come in, and different people is going to be presented to the board and up for pardoning. So again, this is again, some people say that why the last Agung, Sultan Abdullah, did this on his almost last week of his reign, is because he doesn't want to get the most of the heat from it. So yes, of course, Anwar got a lot of hit from it, but again, like you said, how he played very cool. Like he minimally respond to anything being asked about this. It's just the Shafi'i Abdullah, the Najib's lawyer, that doing press conference, and some other strategic communication minister that are doing this. Wait for the announcement by the pardoning board. So those are the rhetorics that they keep repeating. So yeah, now if Najib is granted pardon, I think we need to live with it, and it's not gonna be the last one. So this is just a reminder to a whole lot of Malaysians that before 2018, that we see Najib, we voted Najib out in 2018, and then again recently we, mostly by we, I mean the Pakatan Harapan Alliance, voted uh, other people, and they won PH. Well, the AP won the most seats, and of course, passed us as well. So they want other people to be at helm, not anyone from UMNO, and it shows UMNO only won 20 whatever 26 seats, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's clear as day that they reject this, and if UMNO really smart with it, they don't want to double down on Najib's pardoning again once he got it. Just focus on regenerating new leaders who they have in the pipeline. Maybe Zahid can think of be in the sideline and get someone new to lead UMNO. But I know that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm rightfully so. You pointed out about this whole royal pardons. It's not just, yeah, you're correct. I was mistaken in that regard. But I think also want to mention, because you mentioned Mokhtar Hashim and Harun Idris. Mokhtar Hashim was sentenced to a death sentence for murder, and he was given a royal pardon. And then for Harun Idris,
What
he
a
was
save, right?
what a save, basically.
What
And
a save.
Harun Idris himself was, blamed for creating the counter rallies to May 13th. These are individuals that went to, took very extreme and very drastic actions, which are, you would say, apparent, and they receive full royal pardons here. The point I was trying to make earlier was that, given enough circumstances, you could, of course, the law is meant to be moral. However, if someone is already convicted of being a murderer, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and was given a royal pardon, that means it is not moral. And that brings back to the whole idea of the role of the monarchy. If you were close enough to a certain monarch, then you could easily appeal for royal pardons. Which I'm going. My point back then is that a regular person who does not have that kind of access, who has that kind of gravitas, would be hard pressed to receive a royal pardon for certain crimes, unless given extreme circumstances, unless you're looking at very outlying situation and circumstances. So this goes back to the idea of the role of the monarch in Malaysia. And I'm going to go out and say this is that I'm not okay. You say that you're an anti monarch. I'm going to make it clear that as a one of the foundational pillars of the federation, I still believe they have a role to play in the country. It's just that we have to acknowledge that, we as Sabahans have to acknowledge that, and also on people from the other side, is that this is a West Malaysian institution. It is not something that is shared in Sabah and Sarawak, but it's a case of that's their own thing. Go ahead, and that has to do with how a lot of the civilization development between East and West Malaysia is drastically different from one another. So in West Malaysia, you have the sultans propping up here and there because of their exposure to the Arab trade routes, where sultans was basically the monarchs in the main polities across the sea in other parts of the world. So it was obviously transitioned over and embedded into the whole Malayan Peninsula, because at the time they also had kings, they also had sovereigns as well, obviously within a different cultural context. But because Sultan itself is also a position that is not secular, it's also a religious connotation to the word Sultan. It's supposed to be the defender of the faith. So that's that mixture of the Arabic culture, the Muslim civilization, is how they were able to adapt and adopt it quicker than maybe Sabah, Borneo did. Of course, Borneo had the Bruneian Sultanate, which also had exposure to a lot of these Muslim civilizational developments. But for Sabah, it's a very different story, because Sabah has always been a very tribal society. Malaya has been a feudal society, and also because they've experienced feudalism under the other kingdoms, such as the Majapahites and the Srivijayas. Sabah never really had that exposure. So that's a huge difference of why maybe a lot of people might ask why Sabah doesn't have a sultan. because we never really got exposed to those institutions in terms of state building. Sabah, it wasn't even a state until just recently in the past. The idea of it is only came out in the last 100 years. So we never had that kind of that chronology of that civilization development of exposure, like many of our neighbors did, like Brunei or southern Philippines, which also had a sultanate, the Sulu Sultanate. So this is a case of just it never reached us here, and I think that's a running theme for a lot of things for Sabah in its history, or even Malaysia as a whole. Like, okay, we practice democracy, but to easily transition from a feudal system or a feudal system Malaya or tribal system in Sabah to a colonial system and now to a free liberal democratic system. We're being asked a lot here when it comes to the transition of society and how society should be organized. So that's just a bit of fun facts just to bring up of why Sabah doesn't have a sultan. Maybe if let's say some powerful tribal chief is able to unite all the ethnic groups in Sabah, then maybe they would have made him something of a king. Basically, we do have in the KDM culture, they do have somewhat of it's not exactly the
Hugon
same
still.
title, but it's a similar connotation, which is Hugon Sia, which is Lord Paramount
Yeah.
of the Karazans. So who knows? In an alternate history scenario, if Sabah was more consolidated, more developed at the time civilizationally, who knows? Maybe Hugun Sia would have eventually turned to something what we would call as king, or equivalent of sultan in the Muslim context. So it is just fun ideas to throw around of just to show how much different we are in Sabah compared to the rest of Malaysia.
Yeah, I think that's also sum up like how in every rotation it's only rotate of the nine kings we have, on all of them coincidentally in Semenanjung, and none of us, not even the TYTs. If TYT is part of the royal board, whatever, then why they are not part of the rotation? So that's another question being asked. Even though they are TYT, so are they actually less level than the sultans? Yeah, I don't know. So the governor is the governor for Sabah, Sarawak, Malacca, Pulau Pinang, and yeah, that's it. Right. So I think this is for the this topic today, Najib pardon cases, and up next we will be talking about again pemilu, but post pemilu.